Hello, and welcome to an edition of the Independent Publishers of New England's broadcast interview on matters of interest to anyone involved in the independent publishing industry in New England. Today, we are very fortunate to have with us Ms. Gina Humber, who's speaking to us from Connecticut, I believe. She's a school teacher in New York City. She works with special ed kids, and she's working on an incredible project entitled Diversity is a Verb. She published her children's book. It debuted at the Museum of Natural History last December. And it's a fantastic book, basically about self-acceptance and diversity. And without further ado, thank you very much, Gina, for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Great. Okay, so could you tell us something about the journey that you took in creating your book? What led you to write It's All Good? And could you tell us a little bit about the book? What's it about? Who's it for?
Sure. So as a special education teacher, a lot of times, and even parents, we look to books in order to guide our children in certain behaviors or thoughts. And so for my special needs class, there wasn't a book where they could see their own images and hear stories that were relatable to them. Mm-hmm. And so that kind of pressed on me. And then my own daughter, who is number 4 out of the number 5, she is more darker complected than I am. And so there weren't any children's books that discussed melanin that I could find. And over time, it started to really bother me. There wasn't anything that I could explain to her about the difference between my skin color and hers, and how she felt about herself. And she didn't feel good at all at the time. And so there were books about hair, but there weren't any books that explained about what melanin was. So when those two kind of things happened, I decided to be proactive. I've always been a writer, always enjoyed writing. And I thought it best to create this children's book that included all images. Diversity is very broad. This country has used it just as European American and African American, but it's those with disabilities, Asian Americans, it's Latinos, it's Muslims. It's such a broad, word, but even though we minimize it. And so I wanted to bring that to children to have their stories told and their images seen.
Great, thank you. And the part of your title, which I particularly like, is the self-acceptance and diversity. And part of the reason I like that is because I think that self-acceptance is something that's not often even considered. It's people are not even conscious of the importance of just accepting yourself for who you are. Right. And we were talking earlier when we were setting up the interview about kind of what is on the shelves in terms of kids' books. The majority of the kids' books don't have a lot of variety in terms of children, which is what you were addressing a little bit before. But could you explain a little bit more about the self-acceptance part of that, as a general cultural term?
Right. So what happens with other cultures is that there's an image of what's acceptable and what's beautiful, right? And so the image of what's acceptable and what is beautiful is normally blonde hair, blue eyes. Those are, models and the people that you see on the TV. So imagine now if you're a child who doesn't have blonde hair or blue eyes, how is your image then spoken about in a positive way to yourself? How do you see that as being powerful or being someone who's beautiful? So, and that goes across the board. It doesn't have to, it goes across the board in all different cultures and religions. Exactly. When's the last time you saw a commercial with a girl with a hijab on, asking, did you want to eat Cheerios? So, it's what we view. I do see some changes that are happening in commercials. You know, I do see now they've incorporated homosexuals in commercials, which is very important to show the LGBT community. They show now, if you remember, they did a Cheerios commercials with an African-American man and a European-American woman, and they got, I think, a lot of negative flack from that. That was like a huge thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, like, you know, in 2016, we're like all aghast, right? Oh my God, you know, but you have to show these images so that people can feel like their story is in there. They're included in this world.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
it's a part of our accepting one another in terms of humanity. So
Right.
images are very important. You know, advertisers use images very well in depicting what they want, whether it's the positive or the negative. You know, and the negative side to that, Karen, is, you know, sometimes we watch the news and say, for example, there's a crime and it's, you know, this black, a young black male robbed a store, right? But when it's a European American, they'll say a young man robbed a store. And so you get over time, you know, you start to get this viewpoint of, well, only black people are robbing the stores, you know, like, because it's such emphasis, you know, instead of just saying, why doesn't our media just say there was a robbery, a young man did a robbery? Why do we have to even get into that conversation? But you know, but we do that, and we do that to create these images. So it's very important that children see themselves, hear their stories, know that they're accepted. And it's already statistic and proven that once you feel good about yourself, you can feel good about someone else. You know, it's that saying of hurt people hurt other people. So then if I feel good about myself, then I feel good about you, Karen.
Oh, wow, how about that? Especially after long trials together with technology. That's particularly fun.
Yeah.
One of those bonding experiences.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, no, that's a fantastic point. And I found that myself as a teacher as well. The kids who were content with themselves and at peace with who they are and not trying to be who they thought someone else wanted them to be, but instead just saying like, hey, I'm me. They, as a general rule, they were just so much more fun and happy and never went out of their way to hurt people. So that's a great point. Okay, so and what about the journey towards publication of your book? How did you, like, what channels did you take when it came to deciding editors and designers and bookbinders and the rest of all of that, the copyright law? Oh,
that's a great question. I have to say, like most authors, when you go out and you send your book out and you get rejections, rejections is a part of the process. But my rejections were very specific. I was told that my genre of the book wasn't really a need and that kind of thing, which authors will hear, right? But you've got to stand in the truth of what the story is that you have to say. There's a truth about what you're bringing forth as a writer that other people will connect with. So I believe in that enough. And I did the self-publishing route. And I chose to self-publish my book, which I actually love because I'm a control freak. So it allowed me to make decisions that that I probably wouldn't normally have made, and it put me in a position of power over my own writing and over how I wanted it to go down, you know, in terms of how people saw it, and that was very important.
Okay, so we have a question now coming in from the audience. How do publishers bring these elements into their writing in a natural way? So as opposed to an author, what can a publisher do to assist an author who is trying to, who has an individual story, something completely new and different, like It's All Good? How can a publisher be of assistance there?
I think how publishers can be of assistance is by realizing they have a great role in opening up different conversations through the writing of the authors that are presenting themselves,
Mm-hmm.
and not to be afraid or fearful of what they, of what's not common, what's not generally used,
Mm-hmm.
because it's when we step out on these things that are uncommon that there's this beauty in there, and within that beauty, other people will align themselves and say, I I connect with that. And so, publishers, I'm looking, I would say, for them to be fearless, for them to be fearless about the stories that are being told by, thousands of authors out here who have something to say that connects with other people.
Mm-hmm. All right, great. I just got a note, great answer. So thanks for that. Someone's quite happy. And how do you see the role of independent publishing today? How has it changed kind of the conversations which we're having as a nation? And
Mhm.
what potential has it got?
I thought back in the day, it was kind of negative, right? The idea of self-publishing, because it sort of put that idea that you have somehow failed and you wasn't, but now self-publishing is like the best way to go, at least for me at this present time.
Mhm.
Of course, if a publisher would like to, but but I mean, it had, back in the day, it had a very negative connotation, but now you've got so many different sources and places in which to go to. I actually went to a great place. It wasn't in the United States, believe it or not, it was in Canada. And they helped me put the book together and printed it out, and it was great. So, but I see more and more and more people, especially at book events, who are self-published, just for the reasons that we spoke of,
Mhm.
because of they didn't find anybody who at that time was willing to tell their story and step out on something unfamiliar.
Right. Well, then when we're discussing the upcoming panel that's going to be taking place on Saturday, the 22nd in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, with the other two panelists, we were talking a little bit about courage and fear, and I thought that was just a fantastic and fascinating kind of approach to something that for me, partially because I lived outside of this country for so many years, and I came back and I just realized that the dialogue about fear and courage is quite quiet here, and I think it's a
Mhm.
dialogue that needs to be brought to the fore of uh, what people need, or what it would be healthy for people to consider facing, and it just seems quite invisible. And I had a question. How can, one of the questions that came up is, how can an author who lives a life which, to all intents and purposes, appears to be, a very relatively, what's the word? I'm not coming up with the vocabulary. Lucky life, a comfortable life, and they would like to have characters who are from diverse backgrounds, but this
Mhm.
particular author themselves isn't from a diverse background.
Right.
So, for example, if there's someone from, I lived in Spain for a long time, so if a Spanish man was trying to write about an American woman, and
Mhm.
they were basing it on me, I would certainly hope that they talked to me first. So,
Right.
what would you suggest to an author in terms of, trying to write about a character that they don't know, or write from their perspective? How can someone conclude? Mm-hmm.
I really love that idea of authors stepping out and writing about characters that they might be unfamiliar with in terms of culture or, some sort of identity. You gave a great example in itself. I mean, you get out and you meet people and you create, I would never say to watch it from media. I would never say, you
Yeah.
pick a show on whatever channel and figure out how Latinos live. I would say, to commit yourself into, of course, getting books about that person's culture and understanding the dimensions. Culture is so many layers.
Right.
There's not just one sort of, I'm speaking for myself now, there's not just one type of African American woman, right? There's
Mhm.
so many different types, and you can't just pigeonhole us in one kind of thing. That's for anyone, right? So I think it's best that you go out, you speak to the people, you eat the foods, you enjoy the music, or don't enjoy the music, or not like the food, but
Yeah.
but
You
make the
try.
effort. Yeah, but make the effort to embrace something so that you can bring something to that character that people again will connect to. That's what it's really about, that the reader finds this connection with this character that they can authentically believe in. Like I can actually believe that they were cooking, arroz con pollo. I can actually smell the saffron or the curry of the food, or, I could actually feel it. And for you to do that, you've got to be open. And that's the beautiful thing I think about authors, Karen, is that most of us tend to be very feelers, tend to be sensitive. And so much so that we feel so much that it has to come out in our words. And those words travel into people's souls and minds. And so they give birth to ideas and people and situations. So, a really good author willing to step out on something that's foreign to them will definitely seek those avenues, outside of what they've been told.
Okay, wonderful, wonderful. And for authors and publishers who, and I can think of a few people now who've spoken with me recently, who are really shy and feel very intimidated by their shyness or by their inability to reach out and talk to someone who's very different, who don't know how to approach people from other cultures.
Mhm.
What would you suggest to them? How could they kind of enter into a world that's completely distinct from theirs so that they can write about it authentically?
Mm. So they have these things now called Meetup,
Mm-hmm.
where you can kind of go and experience things. Even if you're shy, you can kind of lay back in the cut, so to speak, and
Great.
watch the dynamics of how people move. And I got that shy people may not necessarily, just go up to people, but you can definitely go to a restaurant, and you
Mm-hmm.
can definitely listen to a foreign movie in
Mm-hmm.
regard to, your research and how you do it. But ultimately, I think the best way to um, write a character with some depth is to open yourself to that experience. I mean, even in the book, It's All Good, when I wrote the perspective from the Asian American child, like I went and looked for names, that were Asian.
Mm-hmm.
So Yan and Chicago, are Asian names. And so, I mean, I didn't want them named like, Bill or, you know, or
Right.
Tanya, that kind of thing. Not to say there are not any Bills and Tanya who are Asian, so please
Right.
don't
Right.
email me about that. But but I wanted there to be some authenticity, right? So that when someone reading it can go, and then that's the thing I want to say too, is that what happened is we had parents who were Asian, and we had some parents who were Latino, and they sent us these great reviews. And in the reviews, they were saying, my child found it so wonderful for you to bring up flan, and how that how that brought into, then the child can kind of go, oh, okay, yeah, this is familiar.
Yeah.
And you can familiar. And then for those who didn't know about it, we put on their site a while ago, how to make flan. So it's that thing between the author and the reader, to find and do your research. You have to do your research in regard to names and dates and making sure things are accurate.
Okay, great. And you have a wonderful website, which I recommend everybody look at, as well as following you on Twitter. I love following you on Twitter, Gina.
Thank you.
Well, it's fun. It lights up my life a little bit. It really does.
Vice versa.
So what do you have in mind for the future of It's All Good? What are you doing with the website and with the project in general?
Oh, wow. What a great question. Well, we are not supposed to tell anybody.
Okay, never mind. All right.
No. But we're revamping the website, which is really good to give it a more professional, polished look. And we are coming out with a app. And so because I'm a teacher at my core, it's very important to set something up where, okay, so after the book is done, how could I go look up a recipe on flan and what that looks like for kids, and put how to write in Chinese, and we're doing all that to incorporate the cultures, especially during this kind of climate. We want to bring about diversity in this kind of way where it makes it easy, so someone who is shy can check things out. And diversity as a verb has been doing really well. As a matter of fact, we've been working with collaborating with some celebrities, so to speak, and making some changes as it relates to our laws. But we're in there, we're doing great things. So
wow, that's fantastic. That's a seriously influential. I mean, how many children's books can make that claim to fame? That's wonderful. That's good. That's great.
Thank you.
Okay,
We're
now,
excited.
yeah, I would imagine. So for publishers who aren't quite sure how, what can they do to reach out to authors who are working in the field of diversity? And one of the things I love about your concept of diversity here is that, like, just looking at the cover of your book, not only do you have people of different ethnicities and religions, but of different physical, you have the girl in the wheelchair, and you have, a kid running behind her with the ball. So different physical abilities. And I just think, I love your book. So what about for a publishing house that would like to find authors like you? And what would you suggest to a publishing house that would like to play a role in basically facilitating conversation about more complex subjects? And by that I mean subjects in the national dialogue which make people nervous, and so maybe people don't are uncomfortable facing the fear that arises of offending someone, or the fear that arises of being misunderstood or misinterpreted. What could a publisher do to kind of help that dialogue along?
I've attended a lot of book events, and I didn't see that many publishers. So I would think that I would like to see, in regards to answering your question properly, say, for example, the Harlem Book Fair that happened, I think it happened in August. So say something like that, for publishers to come out to these book fairs and book festivals and book events and speak to the author in regard to what it is that they have, and begin to go into those nook and what are the crannies and nooks? I'm tired. Nooks and crannies. To go into those nooks and crannies.
It's late.
Yeah. To go into those nooks and crannies where where authors are, and you can at any point in time see a book event going on, and but to go out that extra mile and go to the ones that aren't the big named ones that happen every year. Like, for example, I will be at one in Texas, the National African American Authors, right? So imagine if a publisher was to come to it's in Houston, Texas. So imagine if they were to come there and see a bevy of different authors and hear the stories, right? And so at the same time, that these type of conferences or these type of really well done book events have conferences going on and have workshops.
Right.
And to take it upon themselves to be proactive and listening to the conversations in the workshops. I really heard what you said in terms of people not wanting to, I guess, step on other people's toes, and we live in such a politically correct society. But at some point, discussions have to be had that are difficult. So, on the part of the publisher, I'm hoping that there's this openness, right? That there's this openness to share despite the uncomfortability, because you can come up to me and ask me any question that you want, and if it is offensive, that's that discussion we can have, because sometimes, in all honesty, people may not know,
Right.
If you've not experienced my life, or if I've not experienced your life, how could I know what might be offensive to you if it's never even occurred to me?
Yep, exactly.
So, we have to be willing in the literacy world to be open about this, because when you read books, it's a very opening experience, right? It's very,
Definitely.
you open yourself up to this world. And so publishers have to have that same sort of mind, and be willing to do those things, like, say, for example, this great forum that you're having right now, that they would avail themselves to come in, listen to the chat discussion, and be open and willing to go, wow, IPNE is offering these great, these great discussions. But no, in all reality, there are not that many people having this discussion. So especially at this time, and especially in this specific genre. So, IPNE is doing something that's phenomenal, and it's happening in New England, right? It's not, I live in Connecticut. I love Connecticut. Do I have an I love Connecticut sign up? I love Connecticut. But what I'm saying is that it's not like this is a discussion happening between two African-American women and we're in Harlem or New York.
Right.
This is a discussion between, a European-American and an African-American woman who both happen to love books and love what's happening in the book world and want to see diversity and see different stories being told, whether those are, on that broad scale.
Yep.
So I love what you guys are doing,
Ditto.
Yeah. It's
Thanks.
So the question about publishers, they should be here, right? Or they should be listening to this broadcast afterwards.
Okay, great. Thank you for that fantastic answer. Okay, we just have time for a couple more comments. Our board member, Ginny Towler, who wrote the book Severed and will be on the panel with you, actually won an award at the Harlem Book Festival this summer. So with her book Severed. And so I just got that as a comment. And Ginny's wonderful. I'm really looking forward to the panel.
So am I. It's a great play on words, right? The issues of black and white. And we're talking about diversity, but black and white is also books, right? It's the printed word. So it's a great play on words. And I can't wait for that panel to come. So I'm looking forward to the New England community coming out.
Okay, great. So are we. So once again, the panel is entitled Publishing Color in Black and White, and we'll be discussing a number of different interpretations of the term diversity, a little bit about dealing with issues that might make people feel sometimes about walking on eggshells, and how to do that effectively, and how to create some really important dialogue, which is which I would hope would create a better understanding between people.
Absolutely.
That's my lofty ideal.
Yeah,
Basically, I'm going to have fun. And one of the people on the panel, Grace Stevens, wonderful, wonderful woman, really helped us out last year a lot with the Boston Book Festival, is an expert on in the field of gender diversity. And myself, I work in, I don't know if you want to call it this is my interpretation, but I'm also an educator, and so I work a lot with multiple intelligence theory, and so the diversity of ways that people think and interpret the world and perceive. And hope Howard Gardner doesn't mind my interpretation. I'll have to ask him one of these days. So once again, the panel that Gina Humber is going to be on with us is on Saturday, October 22nd, in just over a week. It's going to be in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, taking place at IPNE. We have our 6th annual conference there this year. It's going to be Friday and Saturday, the 21st and 22nd of October. And our keynote speakers are going to be Angela Boll of the IBPA, David Godine, who's a major publisher here, independent publisher here in New England, brilliant books, and a wonderful, incredibly intelligent, friendly, approachable, fantastic guy. Tim Brooks, who runs or works at the Champlain College Publishing Initiative. He's a member of the faculty, another just fantastic human being. He's working on a project called Endangered Alphabets with Meng Nhu, who's currently working on his PhD at the Harvard Graduate School of Education. So it's going to be just a wonderful conference. Those are our keynotes, and one of the panels that we're going to have is going to be with myself moderating, Gina Humber, who we're talking with, Grace Stevens, and Jenny Towler, who's on the board of IPNE and has just won an award at the Harlem Book Festival. So I am really looking forward to this.
Good, so am I.
So thanks so much for joining us, Gina. It was, as always, a pleasure to talk with you.
Thank you.
Technology aside, it's such a bonding thing, as I mentioned earlier. And we have here at IPNE, we have on Saturday, this coming Saturday, the 15th, in Copley Square, the Boston Book Festival. It's a brilliant event in the field of literature in New England. It's just incredible, amazing speakers. Probably well over 100 booths of authors and publishers, and it's all outdoors, and we are New England, so we haven't had much rain over the summer, so we've all been praying for rain because it's a bit of a drought here and everything's really low, but not Saturday. Saturday we want sun. And following that is the New England Library Association's annual conference. That's going to be on Monday and Tuesday of next week. And the setup is on Sunday, so we'll be there on Sunday afternoon, evening, and then Monday and Tuesday is the conference itself. And if you want to learn anything about libraries and what's new in the world of library science, fascinating, incredible speakers. And so then we have Wednesday and Thursday to kind of recoup, and then Friday and Saturday is our conference. So it's going to be a busy week.
Are you guys up for it? You guys ready?
Spinach. Spinach, tofu, and yogurt. Oh my gosh. And then Sunday the 24th, I am sleeping all day.
I can imagine.
But I'm excited. I'm so excited. Oh, and Charlotte, our producer, Charlotte Pierce, our producer, makes amazing noodles that she puts, oh, what are those beans? She puts in mung beans and the new favorite high protein bean. Can't remember what it is, but her noodles are full of those beans.
I saw something on the side.
Edamame beads with
Oh,
ginger.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah, yeah, yeah. I love those. Yeah, yeah, those are very good.
okay, great. Well, any closing comment? Anything you'd like to add before we close the interview? Anything about?
I would really love for people who heard this to connect with us on our website and our social media, which is ginahumber.com. Of course, purchase the book. If not
Naturally.
for your own child, because your children are grown up, consider the library, consider a school. And we do virtual authors visits. I do virtual authors visits. So we've sold our book from the UK to Saudi Arabia. Let's see,
Wow,
in
great.
Spain. Yeah, so what we'd like to do is connect these schools together and start to do something where US schools connect with UK schools, and we have a discussion based on the book and the contents in it. And so that requires teachers, that requires book lovers, especially authors, to be to come out and be supportive and, you know, connect with me on Twitter. I love Twitter. I don't know why I do, but I do. I love Facebook too. I love Facebook too. But I really love Twitter because people are, it's such a nice social tribe. So that's the best way, you know?
Okay,
Yeah.
great, cool. Well, thanks so much, Gina. It's really just been such a pleasure. And I'll see you in a couple of weeks. Well, 10 days, 9 days now. Something like that. Okay,
Cool.
great.
We're signing off.
Okay,
right.
thank you, Charlotte, our producer, Charlotte Pierce.
You're welcome. The ghost in the machine.
The voice in the machine, yes.
The ghost.
From the red.